using the iPhone 14 Pro for over 2 months and taking 2300 image and video samples with it, I think I'm ready to share its camera review with you guys. Hey guys, it's Saga, and in this video, we are going to take a very detailed look at all the cameras on this iPhone 14 Pro. Now, I have a ton of image and video samples to show you, so I'm not going to spend any time telling you about the camera specs and the camera app interface changes. All you need to know is that almost all the cameras on this iPhone 14 Pro are upgrades over the last year, and the main camera now gets an even bigger 48 megapixel sensor. With that, let us dive straight into the image samples, starting with the ones which I took during the bright daytime. So years after the competition moved on to using high resolution sensors, Apple has finally put a 48 megapixel primary camera on the 14 Pro this year. Physically, it is the biggest sensor that Apple has put on their iPhones yet, and this helps it capture such detailed looking images. Although it is a 48 megapixel sensor, just like any other phone with a high resolution sensor, these are pixel binned 12 megapixel images. You can take 48 megapixel images too, and we'll look at them a bit later, but for now, check out how much information these 12 megapixel images have. Actually, I should not be too surprised with this because most of the phones capture great details when the sun is shining bright. That being said, I was fortunate to be able to take some shots in diffuse cloudy situations as well. If I zoom in on these images, you can see for yourself the amount of details that are there. So no matter the lighting conditions, the main camera on this iPhone 14 Pro delivers amazing amount of details in each outdoor daytime shot. Actually, not just outdoors, but even for indoor daytime shots, you can see that the 12 megapixel images have incredible amount of details in them. There's a bit more contrast in these indoor shots, which makes the darker areas appear a bit more darker than they do with your eyes. Some of you may like this, while the others might not. It is up to your personal preference. As good as these images look, it is not all sunshine and rainbows though. The colors in these images are a bit off at times. Firstly, they are more saturated than how the scene looked in real life. And secondly, there is also a slight yellow tint in most of these shots. For reference, here is the same image from the iPhone 14 Pro and one of the other phones which I am also testing. I can't tell the name right now or it will spoil my next video, but look at how much more saturation and contrast iPhone 14 Pro's image has compared to the other one. The colors in real life were looking more like in the image from the other phone. That being said, since last year we have photographic styles on iPhones, and thanks to them we can tweak the colors, saturation, contrast and tone of these images to your liking. And once I tweaked these settings a bit, the colors started to look closer to how the scene looked in real life. However, I turned the photographic styles off for rest of the shots, so we know how the camera performs straight out of the pocket, because I know for a fact that is the way most people use their cameras. Coming to the dynamic range. I have been a bit critical about the dynamic range on iPhones for the last couple of years, because I think Apple hasn't really improved it a lot since the Smart HDR2. I mean, these images look good. The brighter and darker areas are handled decently, but that's it. Overall, I would say some of these images look dull, especially when compared to the HDR shots from other flagship smartphones. In this shot, the phone did well with the shadows and we see a lot of details in the leaves. But the bright sky in the background was blown out and we can barely see its blue color. Again, in this image, we see a yellow tint overall and the shot kind of looks dull. Wouldn't you agree? iPhones have been one of the best when it comes to focusing. They are quick at it and the transition is very smooth and natural. This iPhone 14 Pro is no different in that sense. Look at how good this close-up shot turned out. But yes, there is again a but. Because the main image sensor is so big and the aperture is so wide, the minimum focusing distance on this phone is one of the worst that I have ever seen. Even from this far, the main image sensor cannot set the focus properly and I have to move a few more inches away from the subject. I think I was so far away from the subject that I don't even consider these to be close-up shots anymore. I really love getting up and close to my subjects, but this phone just won't let me do that. There is however a workaround for that. I can tap the 2x button and this lets me take good close-up shots. They are still incredibly detailed as they are true 12 megapixel shots from the center of the 48 megapixel main sensor. Even after 2 months, I am still yet to get used to taking close-up shots without being very close to the subject. Every time I have to take a close-up shot, I have to keep in mind to press the 2x button, which is getting a bit annoying. I wish the minimum focusing distance was a bit better, so I wouldn't have to go through this pain every time I want to take a close-up shot. All that being said, once the close-up shots are captured, they look amazing. They are a bit pain to get to, at least for me, but if the results look this good, is the process worth it? I'm still not sure about it. To get even closer to your subject, you can switch to the macro mode and it lets you take shots like these. Unlike most of the other phones, these are 12 megapixel macro shots. It doesn't have a dedicated macro camera, but the ultra-wide angle lens delivers these cool looking macro shots. I think this is the best way to achieve these kind of images. I don't take macro shots all that often, and these are the only ones which I took for the video. I like how they turned out and I would like to start taking more of them. Does your phone have macro shooting abilities and do you use it very often? Let me know in the comments. Speaking of the wide lens, it still gets a 12 megapixel sensor, but it gets a wider f2.2 aperture which lets in more light on the sensor, helping us get more details in these shots. Not to mention, this lens will help us get much more of the scene in the shot compared to the normal lens. It also helps us showing the scale of things like in this shot. In the normal shot, you can't really make out how big the river is. The wide shot gives us a perspective of the scale. Thanks to lens correction, the edges or lines in these images are not bulged out, making the images look more natural. We also get a 77mm lens, so there is a 3x optical zoom lens on this phone, and its job is to help us get closer to things. There is also a 2x digital zoom button which captures a 12 megapixel image from the middle portion of the 48 megapixel sensor. So this is actually a lossless 2x 12 megapixel image. Thanks to this option, we have 4 different optical focal lengths with just 3 cameras. When outside, I started using the 3x lens more and more. It gives me an opportunity to compose a scene in a very unique way. If you wish to, you can keep on zooming digitally up to 15 times. Those images don't look all that good, but surprisingly, the 5x and 10x zoomed in images look much better than from previous iPhones. If there is ample light and you have steady hands, these images end up looking very good. Actually, they look much better than I expected them to look. So it's finally time we look at the high resolution 48 megapixel images from this main image sensor and compare it against the regular 12 megapixel ones. In order to take 48 megapixel shots, you will have to switch to the RAW mode and enable the 48 megapixel mode from within the settings. A normal 12 megapixel shot has a size of something between 1.5 to 4.5 MB, but some of the 48 megapixel shots can take up to 120 MB of storage space, which is crazy if you think about it. If I zoom in 5 to 6 times on both these images, you can see how much more details the 48 megapixel ones have compared to the normal 12 megapixel ones. I always thought that 12 megapixel images from the iPhone's camera were sharp and more detailed than most of the other phones, but these 48 megapixel images are on a whole new level. These are Pro RAW images, so they have some computation pre-applied, but there is still a ton of room and information if you want to edit them even further. You can play with the colors, highlights, shadows, exposure, tone, crop in to recompose the shot later on, and do much more with these images. The possibilities are endless. This mode comes in handy when you want to capture some architecture or landscape where you would want to preserve most of the details or zoom in on some part of the image later on. Unlike most of the other phones, these high resolution images have great dynamic range and good colors, so if you want, you can click most of your daytime shots in this mode. But as I said before, the file sizes are enormous and that might fill up the internal storage on your phone pretty fast. So I think for most of your daily shots, it is best to stick with the default 12 megapixel mode, as those images are amazing as well. Now I love shooting portrait mode images with my phone. And to no one's surprise, I've always felt that iPhones have had the best and most natural looking portrait mode shots out of any smartphones. Just look at these images. The edge detection is almost perfect, the subject is in sharp focus, the blur roll-off is so natural, and the background blur make these images look like they have been shot with an actual DSLR camera. Look at the subject, colors and dynamic range in these portrait shots, it all looks so good. There are no dark shadows on the face and no overexposed part in the background. But in this next shot, the edge separation and the background blur is perfect, but the colors were somehow messed up. The whole image has a greenish yellow tint which ruined the shot for me. We can fix the colors with a little bit of editing, but with the amount of money that I have spent on this phone, I don't think I am wrong to expect it to get the colors right every single time. That being said, leaving a couple of portrait shots aside, most of the other ones which I took had great looking colors, as you can see here. Thanks to the 3x telephoto lens, we have the option of taking zoomed in portrait shots. Look at the difference the 3x lens makes to the background. It is so nicely compressed and gives the image a completely different look. When in well lit condition, I have started taking more zoomed in portrait shots, but you should also know that you will have to be pretty far from your subject to get them in the frame properly. I normally avoid using the zoomed in portrait mode in indoors or in anything less than ideal lighting conditions, because this lens doesn't have the best sensor and aperture, so the low light zoomed in portrait shots might have a bit too much grain if the light is not enough. That being said, I love taking portrait shots with this iPhone 14. I had an equally amazing time taking portrait shots of objects. I feel like using the portrait mode is the easiest way to make your images stand out and look that much more professional compared to the sea of normal looking shots which basically have no depth or another dimension to them. So go out, shoot some portrait shots with whichever phone you have, and look at how much different and better these images look compared to your normal shots. Moving on to the images which are shot in artificial and lower lighting conditions. Most of the flagship phones do really well in these conditions, and thanks to the huge image sensor, wide aperture and now pixel binning, the main camera on the iPhone 14 Pro is no different. It takes just as good images as it did during the daytime without even breaking a sweat. These are again 12 megapixel shots, because the 48 megapixel mode is not doing the best when it comes to capturing images in these lighting conditions. Even then, you can see there are ton of details in these artificially lit 12 megapixel images. I'm really surprised to see that there is absolutely no noise at all even in the darker parts of these images. One of the main reasons for this is the deep fusion mode. When there is any sort of ambient light like in these shots, the deep fusion mode is triggered automatically and it grabs a few long and short exposure frames and combines them together to form a detailed noise-free shot. This time around, the deep fusion algorithm is applied before the image is processed instead of after it like on previous iPhones, and that makes the images look even more detailed. All of this happens in the background and without any delay or shutter lag, so you can keep on shooting your shots at your own pace without missing any of the action. The colors in these low light images are slightly on the cooler side though. For some reason, 14 Pro tries to make the light and colors in these images appear cooler, which is surprising because iPhones have for the longest time let the colors in these images look like they were in real life. This is one of the very few phones that I really like to shoot with in lower light. Not because of the night mode, but because of how late the night mode kicks in. Don't get me wrong, night mode images look good, but they take at least a couple of seconds to capture, and if you move your phone during that time or if you have someone in the shot who is moving, the image will be blurred out and unusable. I really appreciate that this iPhone 14 Pro is not too keen on switching to the night mode, and despite of that, the huge image sensor, wide aperture and OIS help us get such detailed looking shots. The lens flare issue is still present, which has been plaguing the iPhone since the iPhone 11, but thankfully it has been reduced to a great extent on the 14 series phones. I'm not talking about these flares, but about the ghosting flares that we see in some of the shots like this one. These ones are actually good kind of flares. I actually composed the shot this way purposefully so I could get these flares in the shot. I feel these kind of lens flares give the shot a different character. Alright, now as we move to even lower light, you can keep on capturing the shots without the night mode, but you will start seeing much more noise creeping in the shot. But if you turn on the night mode, the images are much more cleaner like you can see in these shots. Images with the night mode have more light and details in them, and at the same time, noise level is reduced by a huge margin. That being said, I still try and limit using the night mode for the reasons which I mentioned earlier, and more often than not, I would take a shot without the night mode than with it. But if you do want to use the night mode, iPhone 14 Pro will end up taking amazing shots even in very low lighting conditions. The wide lens on this phone gets a slightly wider aperture, which lets in more light on the image sensor behind it, resulting in better looking low light wide shots than previous iPhones. And just like during the daytime, the wide lens will let you capture a different perspective of the same scene and also show much more of it. We went through this earlier that the wide lens doesn't have the best image sensor behind or the lens optics in front of it, and this results in an even bigger difference in the normal and wide shots in the low light. There is much more information and less noise in the normal shots compared to the wide ones. Yes, the wide lens also gets a night mode, but these images take over twice as long to capture compared to the night mode shots with the normal lens. And this means you will have to hold the phone steady for over 3 to 5 seconds for these images to look decent. Because of all these reasons, I would again suggest you to stick to the main camera for most of your low light shots. The 3x lens also captures a lot of details even in lower light, but since the aperture is even narrower on this lens, there just isn't enough light in these shots unless you have your phone on a tripod, and those shots will turn out really good. You have the option to use this lens in lower light, but the results might not be all that rewarding if the lighting conditions are like these. Personally, I like to stick with the normal camera for all of my low light shots. That one gets the biggest image sensor, widest aperture and OIS, which makes its images look so much better than any of the other ones taken with a wide or telephoto lens. That brings us to the front facing camera. This camera still has a 12 megapixel sensor, but it's now a better sensor and has a much wider f1.9 aperture, and it also gets autofocus, all of which helps the selfies from the iPhone 14 Pro look so good. I've been saying this for the longest time that selfies from the iPhones have not been up to the mark. But with the iPhone 14 series, Apple has turned it around. These selfies look amazing and have a ton of details in them. Skin tones look good, and the color temperature and white balance is also more consistent while taking selfies. I don't take too many selfies outside of these camera reviews and comparison videos, but if you do, you will love this upgraded selfie camera. Edge detection is again almost perfect for portrait selfies, and since just the subject is in focus and everything else is gradually blurred out, the faces in these ones look even sharper than the normal selfies. That being said, despite of having autofocus and advanced processing algorithms, if you have multiple people in your shot, someone will still be blurred out. I wish Apple could fix this thing. If I have multiple people in my portrait selfies, I would like every single one of them to be in sharp focus, not just the ones who are closest to the camera. Here's a video from the front facing camera of the iPhone 14 Pro. You can see how it handles the overall colors of the scene, exposure, and stabilization when I'm walking around with it. There is a match going on next to me, so You can also let me know in the comments, how do you think this phone is picking my voice? You might already know this, but iPhones are the best when it comes to shooting videos. No matter what everyone else says, and no matter what resolution and frame rate options Android flagship phones boast to have, none of them have the smoothness, quality, or even the bitrate as the iPhone's videos do. Just look at these videos from the main camera. If you are on a vacation with your friends or family, this is the phone you would want to carry so you could take best looking videos. Switching between the lenses while shooting videos is very seamless and smooth, and no matter which camera you shoot with, the videos just look excellent. Here I was in some tight spaces, so the normal lens could not show me the entire place or scale of things. Switching to the wide lens made a whole lot of difference. It lets me show how grand and majestic these arches were. Even for this video, the normal lens did not let me show the scale of the entire architecture, but the wide lens made a big difference. It let me get the whole tomb in one shot, and even you guys can see the scale of the entire structure in a much better way. The cinematic mode, which was introduced with the iPhone 13, now lets you shoot videos in 4K resolution, and they look even better. Just like before, you can change the amount of blur to the background and switch the focus points even after you have shot the video. With that, we have seen over 150 image and video samples from all the cameras on this iPhone 14 Pro. I love the cameras on this phone and the overall experience of taking all these images. Unlike the previous iPhones, this one doesn't get too hot too soon even if you are shooting outdoors, so you can continue clicking your images for much longer. And even the screen now gets much brighter, so viewing the display even under direct sunlight is not an issue. These cameras are definitely an upgrade over the previous iPhones, especially the main 48 megapixel sensor. There are however 3 or 4 issues which I faced with this phone. I have mentioned most of them during the video, but I will list them down once more. First, I don't like the weird yellow tint in some of the shots. It is not very easily visible when you look at these images alone, but it's very apparent as soon as we start comparing these images with ones from other phones. Next, I would have liked the HDR mode to do an even better job. And one of the other things which frustrated me is the inability of the main camera to focus on very close by objects. I take a lot of close-up shots, and not being able to get close enough to the subject made me miss a lot of shots in the last 2-3 months. And the final issue which I have is a cosmetic one, and it might not even bother everyone as much as it bothers me. I don't like how much dust and debris gets caught around the lenses in this glossy camera module. I just hate that, and I'm constantly trying to wipe it clean. I wish Apple used matte glass on the camera module as well, so it gathered a bit less dust and debris. That's it. I'm working on comparing the cameras on this phone with some of the other phones which I have, and those videos will be hitting your subscription box very soon. So these were my thoughts about all the cameras on this iPhone 14 Pro. You guys saw the images too, so what do you guys think about these cameras? Let me know in the comments. That is it for this video guys. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel for a lot more quality tech videos like this. You can also check out some of the other videos from this channel. This has been Sagar, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.